fallout, smoke, women crying for their sons because their sons are not, Romans killing riotous groups that are rising up. Free Judea, free our people, autonomy for Israel. You had Herod, an Edomite, and his dynasty. Herod's ruling, killing any potential threat, any potential Messiah. Then you had the Pharisees and the Sadducees that we learn from Josephus are not Jews by birth. No.
Brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered. We are original Hebrew.
Let's go! All praises be to the Most High God. Yeah, I say it.
I was opportune to meet my grandparents, whom from childhood had always made us to understand that we are one of the lost tribes of Israel. Okay. So from my grandmother.
Right? Now look at these. Yeah, I'm telling you, I gotta show y'all. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Just look for yourself. And this is the creme de la creme. All praises be to the Most High, y'all. Everything we've been through, y'all, the Most High is going to retribute it on all the nations that have had a hand in the oppression of his apple, the apple of his eye, his chosen people, his beloved, his fervent lover, his only begotten. They're going to have their part in the lake of fire. You see them tormented by some kind of creature. I don't even know what that even is, y'all. Judgment in chains. He that led into captivity shall go into captivity. All praise to the Most High, y'all.
And unfortunately, we were right.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
And ethnicity is a code? What's up, Zion Dynasty? This is your favorite dreaded Israelite, the Lion of Ephraim. Yes, yours truly, Mr. JB Zion. Y'all, welcome back to the channel, family, or welcome back to Zion Dynasty. Y'all are pumped. I'm in this thing. I'm ready to go. We're about to have a good old-fashioned Bible study, family. We're going to have an exhaustive study to end this madness, y'all. Not once and for all, because I'm going to keep having to revisit this topic to really explain David's lineage, the power of Ephraim, the birthright of Joseph, the messianic prophecies, and I'm going to use the historical context of the book of Ruth, Samuel, David's lineage that is mentioned in the book of Samuel as well. Y'all, we about to jump into it. This is going to be a good old-fashioned Bible study on the book of Ruth. I'm going to go exhaustively in the book of Ruth. It's only 4 chapters, family, so we're going to go through all 4 chapters. Go through the highlights. I'm going to break down the historical context of the book of Ruth, who wrote the book of Ruth, what was going on, why is this book so powerful in terms of redemption, in terms of the restoration of Joseph, the double fruit of Ephraim. We're about to deal with it because a lot of my people, y'all don't read. I'm telling you, you don't. And y'all, shout out to every follower of Zion Dynasty, all of y'all that have been supporting the channel, all my Israelite brothers and sisters, not just y'all, but the Gentiles. But specifically, y'all that study to show yourselves approved, y'all that have done the DNA, y'all that know the oral tradition of the Yoruba. I have a lot of Yoruba, Igbo family members, Nigerian Israelites that message me, that email me, that say keep doing it. This verifies the oral tradition. So when I see Negroes get on here and start bashing this history, bashing the oral tradition of the ancestors that gave you life, y'all have heard me say on a number of occasions that the purest form of worship of the Creator is to give back to the thing that gave you life. This is not just limited to thou shalt honor thy mother and thy father, but every time you honor your ancestors, you honor your elders, you honor their oral tradition, you attract spiritually life. Even from the grave, the Most High honors those that honor the vehicle by which he used to transport your soul into the earth realm. So y'all gotta kiss the power of what I'm saying. There are those, and I no love lost between B'nai Israel, But when I see brothers come against the oral tradition of the Yoruba that is verified, it is so verified that the white folks couldn't even deny it. You got the Jewish Encyclopedia of the Diaspora, you got Oxford, Harvard, all types of different scholarly literature that verified the B'nai Ephraim. That African Americans up toward the 80 to 90 percentile are either Yoruba or Igbo. Most of y'all have done your DNA, you've run across Nigeria. So I'm not going to prolong this, but I got to show you eschatologically through the scriptures, the prophecies of Ephraim, prove that lineage of David through the book of Ruth, and show y'all. Now, before I go too deep, I'm going to put a scripture on the screen. I'm about to put up Jeremiah chapter 31. I'm going to put it up on the screen for y'all. And let me see if I can pull it up on my laptop as well, because I'm doing a screen record at the same time. Now, let's go to Jeremiah 31. Now, in Jeremiah 31, beginning at the first verse, it says, "At the same time, saith the Most High Yah, will I be the God, the Elohim of all the families of Yasharal, Israel." So this is the Most High prophesying that in this event that he's going to do, he's going to reconcile all the families of Israel. That means the house of Israel, which is Ephraim, as well as Judah. He's going to reconcile those two families and create one restored kingdom. Now let's keep reading. "And they shall be my people. Thus saith the Most High Yah, the people which were left of the sword found grace in the wilderness, even Israel, when I went to cause him to rest." So he's saying, even though I put my people in the wilderness, I scattered my people, they found grace in the wilderness. That means the Most High, for his name's sake, for the promise that he swore to Abraham, he would remember his seed, even in spiritual Egypt, even in captivity, even though we forsook the covenant, even though we turned our back on our heritage, even though we forgot the creator that gave us life, the Most High promises that he's going to remember Israel. Y'all got to understand, when you see Israel in this context, it's talking about the northern kingdom. The Bible is clear on this when it says the house of Israel and the house of Judah. So all of y'all, I mean, this is a side note, all of y'all that say, oh, he's a false prophet trying to build up Israel, trying to build up Ephraim, I'm like, what's wrong with y'all? What? Do you not know the very mission of Yahusha? He said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I know a lot of y'all like it. We know the chapter. I don't think you really heard what I said. I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Some of y'all might have got it. And we're going to see it in Jeremiah 31:31 that says, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. So wait a second. Yeshua's mission was only to go regather Ephraim, to save that which was lost, to save that prodigal son, to save those scattered northern kingdom Israelites that had already been Hellenized. So a lot of y'all don't know what you're doing. I know a lot of y'all don't read, you don't study, you don't look at these prophecies. I study this stuff every day, y'all. I meditate on these scriptures every day. So when y'all start blaspheming the Spirit of the Most High and coming against this work to restore Joseph, be careful. Be very careful, because you're blaspheming the very work of the Most High, the very heart of the Father that loved Joseph, which was manifested in Jacob's love for that son. And Christ himself, when he was on earth, he devoted his life to save those Ephraimites, save those scattered Israelites. So be careful what you're doing. Let's keep reading. In Jeremiah 31, verse 3, it says, the Most High Yah appeared of old unto me, saying, Yea, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you. The Most High said, I love Israel with an everlasting love. Who was the name of Israel put on? The northern kingdom of Israel. You had the northern kingdom of Israel, the house of Israel, and the southern kingdom of Judah. You might see the northern kingdom called Israel, Samaria. You may also see the northern kingdom referred to as Ephraim, and we're going to see that within the text. Let's keep reading. Again, I will build you, and you will be built. The Most High said, I will build you, and thou shalt be built. There ain't no troll. There ain't nobody that's coming against this work of restoring the lineage of David, the historical lineage of Ephraim. Nobody can stop this work when I build my people. They shall be built, O virgin of Yasharal. Thou shalt again be adorned with tabrets, and you gonna go forth in dancings.
Thou shalt yet plant vines upon the mountains of Samaria. When you see these vines in the scripture, when you hear about the wine press, when you see different imagery of the grapes and that true vine, the branch, all of this is Josephite, Ephraimite language going back to the prophecy that the patriarch Jacob prophesied to Joseph in the book of Genesis, chapter 49. When you hear about that, and we're going to see that, we also know, based on that verse, Samaria is the capital of Ephraim. A lot of y'all with this whole Genesis 49 madness, oh, you know, the scepter will not depart from Judah and a lawgiver from between his feet until the Messiah of Judah comes. That ain't what that prophecy said. Let me sidetrack to that real. Let's go to Genesis real quick, y'all. It's just so much I got to deal with. And I know a lot of people are sincere on the channel and they just want to learn. But there's a lot of people that are proud and they really don't want to know what truth is. They just want to believe what they've been told. Now let's go to this. And y'all got to get that now. A lot of people that bash the 12 tribes chart, you got all African Americans being Judah for it. The Lord didn't tell you that. That 12 tribes chart told you that. You telling me that's the only ones that was scattered? That don't even make common sense. And a lot, but let's go to Genesis 49 first. So in Genesis chapter 49, it reads, now we're gonna go down to the favorite verse that everybody loves. We're gonna start at verse 8, right? Judah, you are he whom your brother shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of all your enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Now y'all watch this now. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion. And as a old lion, who shall arouse him? Verse 10, now this is what I went to it for. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall be the gathering of the people. This is basic reading comprehension, family. We're gonna break that verse down slow. A lot of y'all are hype. I'm telling y'all, you go with what everybody's saying and you don't have a relationship with the Father for yourself to sit down and open the scriptures and line upon line study that thing. Why do I say that? I know I offended a lot of y'all because I'm going to show you something that was plain as day in that verse. Let's read it again. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. Now this is basic grammar 101. If I tell somebody that you're going to be the wealthiest man on earth until, the word until means that the succeeding statement, the next statement, is going to bring to fruition or end the previous statement that was stated before the word until was used. If I tell somebody, man, you were the greatest basketball player on earth until, right? Now y'all, I'm a bash y'all little. I'll be like, Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player on earth until LeBron James came. And y'all just playing around with y'all, but I just want to show you that basic principle of until means the next statement is not tied to the previous statement. So how are y'all using Genesis 49:10 to say that Judah is the tribe that the Messiah comes from? If anything, verse 10 proves my point. Let's read it again. And I'm breaking it down, I'm taking it real slow for y'all. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. When it says a lawgiver from between his feet, family, it's talking about his loins. From between his feet is where his seed comes out. So there's always going to be a lawgiver that comes out of the lineage of Judah until Shiloh comes. Let's read it one more time. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. So now let's substitute Shiloh with the Messiah of Judah. Now let's read the verse again. So the rulership, the scepter, the authority will not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between Judah's lineage until the Messiah of Judah comes. What? Now family, you got to see how that does not make common sense based on the context of the scripture. Clearly until is signifying a different tribe because of the let's read it again. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. So clearly, family, Shiloh would have to indicate a different tribe from Judah, because the verse is telling you that Judah would always have a ruler, a king, a scepter come out of his loins, a lawgiver from out of his seed, until this Shiloh person shows up. So this Shiloh person cannot be of the tribe of Judah, because it's saying that Judah rules until this person comes. If this person was of the tribe of Judah, it wouldn't have to use the word until. It would say that Judah's rulership is always going to be here, and the Messiah Shiloh will come out of Judah to XYZ. So clearly, when it tells you that the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes, Shiloh would have to be another tribe coming from the other 11 sons of Jacob. Now, to figure out what tribe it's talking about, who is Shiloh referring to, all you have to do is Google Shiloh, family. And I'm going to try to put that on the screen for you all. Shiloh. Shiloh is an ancient city, an ancient hill city within Samaria. Samaria being the capital of Ephraim's territory that was given to those sons of Joseph. So basically, we see in the text that this is a messianic prophecy, but this Shiloh figure is a Ephraimite figure that would regather all the tribes of Israel, and that Judah would have rulership, would have authority in the earth realm until Shiloh, or this Ephraimite presence, resurges and rebuilds that ancient kingdom and regathers all the tribes together as one family. So family, understand, when you hear Shiloh within Judah's blessing, this is a messianic prophecy about Joseph's lineage. Now, let's look at Joseph's lineage, the prophecy Jacob gave to Joseph in this same chapter. Then we're going to go back to Jeremiah 31. Now, when you go down to Joseph's prophecy in Genesis 49 verse 22, it says, Yosef is a fruitful bough, right? Now this gets into Ephraimite. That is that same, I don't want to skip, let's just read it. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough, a fruitful branch, right? By a well. So this fruitful vine, this fruitful bough, this fruitful offshoot, that's what the word bough means in the Hebrew. This fruitful branch is planted by a well. Now, this is the same imagery that the descendant David uses in Psalms chapter 1. He said, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Most High Yah, and in it doth he meditate both day and night. He shall be as a tree planted by rivers of living water. So that same imagery that the psalmist, the sweet psalmist of Israel, Dawood, is speaking of, that same imagery goes back to his ancestors, him being an Ephraimite that lived within Bethlehem in Judah. That same imagery of this fruitful branch planted by rivers of living water, planted by a well, is the same prophecy that Jacob gave to Joseph. Let's keep reading. So it says, Joseph is a fruitful branch, even a fruitful branch by a well, whose branches run over the wall of the well. So these branches, in the midst of a low place, in the midst of this well, their branches run over the well, and they're planted by rivers of living water. This same imagery that goes to Psalm chapter 1, we see with Joseph's blessing. Now, just to give some context, Joseph was hated by his brethren. A lot of us, we know the story. He was sold into that pit. Some people believe it was a well. A lot of Judean scribes believe that it was a well, in fact, which is the well that was given to Joseph by Jacob. We see that in John chapter 4, the well that Christ went to and told the Samaritan woman that he was that Messiah she was waiting for, that Messiah ben Yosef. So we see that Joseph was hated by his brethren. He was put in this pit, sold into slavery, yet in the midst of captivity, he became fruitful. His branches became numerous. His lineage became profuse in all the countries that he was scattered into. That goes into him being sold into the Egyptian slavery. But the person of Joseph became doubly fruitful in Egypt. So there's a prophetic connotation of his descendants going through a similar event through the transatlantic. And there's also his personal experience where in Egypt, Joseph married his Egyptian wife and had two sons, Manasseh the firstborn, Ephraim the younger, and Ephraim received the birthright. So in the midst of him being in a place that he was sold as a slave, Joseph, we know the story, becomes the chief vizier, and he has 2 sons even in captivity. And he names Ephraim this fruitful bough because the Most High made him fruitful even in captivity. Let's keep reading. So it says, Joseph is a fruitful branch, even a fruitful branch by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him, and they hated him. His brethren hated him. Y'all gotta hear the power of the word. This is what our people have gone through. The Ish people funded the slave trade. I'm just speaking facts, right? I'm just telling the truth. This is what happened. You had those Jewish people and the nations conspire to sell Joseph into slavery. We see this happen in the life of Joseph as well. All the other brothers, all the other sons of Jacob, they hated, they were envious of Joseph because of his dream that was really a prophecy of Joseph being elevated as a prince to save his family. Because he told his brethren that dream, that made them hate him even more, and they wanted to kill him, but they said instead we'll just put him in a pit, take his coats and tear it and dip it in blood, which is prophetic going into Yeshua, right? We see what happened to Yeshua when they parted his vestures and they sold his clothing, that Joseph was, as you would say, he was crucified. He was sold out by his brethren. He was betrayed by his own family, right? But this was by the orchestration of the divine will of the Most High to save not only Israel, but the entire world, because Joseph would become the vizier of Egypt and he would distribute all wheat to all nations, all people that needed food. They would come to Egypt and Joseph would make distribution to all people. So this was the will of the Most High, that by Israel betraying Joseph, he will be elevated. The Gentile in Egypt, the Gentiles would cleave to Joseph, just like Yeshua. He would save the world and save his people by his people sacrificing him. Y'all, this is the messianic hope. This is the messianic undertone of the entire scriptures. We see this event rest upon the crown of Joseph. And we're going to see it. Let's keep reading. The archers have sorely grieved him, and they shot at him. His own people hated him, right? But his bow abode in strength. Hear me. And the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty El Gibor of Jacobi. And from him, this is talking about Joseph, is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Woo-hoo-hoo. Please catch this, family. So from this Joseph that his brethren rejected will come a stone, a shepherd rock. I know y'all know the prophecy and it came to your mind as I said it. The stone which the builders rejected, hear me, has become the head of the corner. We think that that's talking about the tribe of Judah. No, but the mystery is the Most High tucked Ephraim within Judah's territory, so that lion out of Judah was blood Ephraim, fulfilling this prophecy that Jacob spoke, fulfilling the birthright, fulfilling that Judah would hold the scepter until out of him would come Ephraim, and to him, to Shiloh, would be the gathering of the people. So the Most High is reconciling all these different prophecies together. He said that yes, Judah would hold the rulership until Shiloh comes. So Judah would be the last person holding dominion when Shiloh and Ephraimite presence would come out of him, which is that lion that comes out of Judah, which is that Ephraimite shepherd rock, which is the stone that the builders rejected, which is the archers shot at and hated him and betrayed by his own people to save the entire earth in Egypt during the time of the famine. Hear me. This ain't been preached to y'all before. I'm giving you, and I know a lot of y'all ain't heard, I give all glory to the Most High Yah, because I ain't make this up. This is in the word of the Most High Yah, and it's a lot of elders on here that also know this truth. I've had people, elders, that say I've known this for 20 years, but for some reason, the mystery is that we are the descendants of that hope, of that branch, of that Josephite lineage that brings salvation to the entire earth, the Negro, through our giftings, through our abilities, through our talents. Y'all already know how our people have created the very infrastructure of America and the nations. We boomed the agricultural revolution in the Americas, which led to the industrial revolution. We already know how off the back of Israel, specifically Joseph, being sold into Egypt, has turned into the blessings of the nations. And this is epitomized in Yahusha, who by the rejection of his own people, we know the Pharisees, them scribes, they hyped up the entire Israelite people and had the Israelites reject their own Messiah, had Peter reject his own Messiah that he walked with, that he talked with. Peter knew Yeshua's heart. He knew he was going. Peter denied him 3 times before the crow crowed. Y'all gotta hear me. But in his own people rejecting him, he became a superstar for the Gentiles. They whitewashed his life and turned him into a global icon. The cross is the biggest symbol in the earth. Y'all better hear me. So they took that Negro Judean, they took that Negro Israelite, they took that Negro Yeshua, took his life and used his life to bless all the nations. But this was by design of the Most High to preserve our history in the midst of captivity. Y'all better talk to me. But this is the prophecy of Joseph. This is the prophecy of Ephraim. That's the mystery. The nations know who we are as Moorish Ephraimites, as Israelites. They know we are that so-called lost tribes of Israel. They know those are those Nigerians and Africans in the continent. They know that they targeted them and sold them into slavery. Because in 1995, y'all better hear me, the Prime Minister of Israel sent a research team into Nigeria to search for the 10 lost tribes. Why did he send them to Africa? They know where that northern kingdom is. Y'all, we've gone through the Moroccan history. We're going through the oral tradition of the Yoruba that say, y'all better hear me. Y'all already know the oral tradition of the Yoruba that say that when the Jews and the Moors of Spain were banished out of Granada, were banished out of Jewstown, they went into Morocco and later settled in Yoruba land in Nigeria. We already know the history. We know the Igbos say that they come from Gad's 8th son area.
I was opportune to meet my grandparents, whom from childhood had always made us to understand that we are one of the lost tribes of Israel. One of the lost tribes of Israel. One of the lost tribes of Israel.
We already know about the 2 Afars, the Biafras. We know about the Ephraimite family from the Wifran Jewish Virtual Library, from Tel Aviv Jerusalem Library. We already know, family, how all of these Africans, they claim to come from Ephraim. They claim to come from the northern kingdom, that they know that they are the lost tribes of Israel, that they have been practicing pre-exilic Yahwism before the Jewish state, even, family, before the Judean state. They had already been sold into captivity dating back to the Assyrian dynasty of 600 to 700 BC. We see northern kingdom was dispersed by the Assyrians and went into Africa, founding Nigeria. So the mystery, family, is the Judean scribes, through treachery or not teaching his history, have tried to hide Ephraim, who was clearly behind the scenes in the text. That the messianic prophecy that we know about this Messiah coming from David's lineage, this Messiah, star of Jacob, this Messiah that will regather Israel, this Messiah that will return them back to the land and rebuild the temple. This goes back to an ancient prophecy spoken by the patriarch Jacob over Joseph's life, and it's confirmed by Moses. Now let's keep reading in Genesis. So we see Joseph is a fruitful branch planted by a well. Just like David said, the righteous are planted by rivers of living water, right? Whose branches run over the wall. He was very fruitful, had a mighty nation of offsprings. His people hated him. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of El Gibor, the mighty God of Yaakov. From him is the shepherd, the stone that the builders rejected of Israel, even by the God of thy father, who will help thee, Joseph, and your seed, and by the Almighty, who shall also. Now look at this elaborate blessing that Jacob gives to Joseph, unlike any of the other brethren. And by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above, and the blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast, that means fruitfulness. The Yoruba have the highest rate of twins. Nigeria has the highest rate of twins in the earth. Also, the surname Ephraim shows up more in Africa, specifically Nigeria, than any other country on earth. any other continent. Ephraim, the name, shows up more in Africa, and the rate of twins is highest among the Yoruba, the Nigerians, than any other people on earth. They are known as the most fruitful people. I had a Yoruba sister, I think Sister Ellen, talk about how it's a certain yam that they eat. Y'all gotta hear me. They're the most fruitful people on earth, and they can't even explain it. They think it's linked to that yam. I believe it's by the Most High, because most scholars say that Ephraim and Manasseh were probably twins. Y'all better hear me, just like Jacob and Esau. So you see how spiritual Joseph's lineage was. That's why Jacob said, Ephraim and Manasseh, they're going to be my sons. Like Reuben and Simeon are, and the birthright going to rest on Ephraim. Let's keep reading. Even by the God of your father Joseph, he going to help you. Even if they try to crucify you and sell you into slavery, he going to help you. And by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb, the blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors. Jacob said, I have ascended. The blessings that were on my forefathers, the Most High has increased that thing on me unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. And you think that's done away with? All y'all that think you Judah, oh, you finna see who you really are. And you finna see the blessing, the magnitude of the blessing that the Most High put on Joseph is something that just read it now. And he says, the blessing that's on me or on thy father Joseph has prevailed above the blessings of my forefathers unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of him that was separated from his brethren, even the Nasi of his brethren. Woo-hoo, hear me. He said that all these blessings that are upon me, my son, the blessings of my father Isaac, the blessings of his father Abraham, all of it combined to the everlasting hills is going to be on the crown of the Nasir. What? That's what. When you look at the Hebrew, that word separated from his brethren is consecrated. Is where you get the word Nazir from, where you get the Nazarite vow from, where they grew their locks out. That Nazarite vow that we see on Samuel the Ephraimite out of Mount Ephraim, and as well as Northern Kingdom Samson, that blessing of the Nazarite vow where they did not partake of wine, where they would grow their locks out, was to symbolize how when Joseph was separated from his brethren, he would have been in that pit. We don't know how long he was, but he was separated for the purpose of the Creator to be able to provide salvation for Israel and for the earth. That's why Christ was a Nazarene, because Christ was born in Bethlehem, the descendant of David, those Ephraimite clan that lived within Bethlehem, within Judah. Read it, and we're going to go into it. Let's keep reading. So all of these blessings are going to be on the crown of Joseph. So family, the messianic prophecy, the double fruit, the blessings of the breast, the blessings of prodigy, the blessings of wealth, the blessings to be able to have the wealth to save your people, all of that birthright package deal was placed upon the crown of Joseph. So that's why y'all got to go through these scriptures. I'm telling you, because if you knew it, you might wouldn't be jumping on that Judah bandwagon. And I'm just bringing y'all truth. I'm just telling you the truth. Because historically, we're going to see that Judah was mixed in with a lot of Edomite influence. We know about Herod, the Herodian dynasty. We know about Agrippa. We know about the Pharisees and the Sadducees. According to Josephus, a lot of them were not Jews by birth. What were Edomites that were planted in the land of Judea during the Second Temple era to be able to monitor the Zealots, the Sicarii, those rebel-rousing Israelites, those Nazarenes, those Essenes that were trying to overthrow the Roman government historically. Now that we see this blessing, family, in Genesis 49, now we're going to go to Deuteronomy 33, where we see Moses, the man, give that same blessing to Joseph. Let's go to it. So family, in Deuteronomy chapter 33, it begins at verse 13. It says, and of Joseph Moses said, blessed of the Most High Yah be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew and for the deep that coucheth beneath. Now that coucheth goes into that line out of Judah, but I ain't gonna go there yet. And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon, and for the chief things of the ancient mountains, even Samaria, and for the precious things of the everlasting hills, and for the precious things of the earth. All of this is going to Joseph. And for the precious things of the earth and the fullness thereof, and for the good will of him that dwelt in the bush. Who is Moses talking about? That the presence of the Most High himself that was in the bush that spoke to Moses. He said that God is working. Let's watch it now. He that dwelt in the bush is working with this tribe. Let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph and upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren. His glory is like the firstborn of a bull, and his horns are like the horns of a unicorn. With them he will push together and regather to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim. They are the thousands of Manasseh. Yes! Yoruba and Ephraim. But y'all want to hear me? Woohoo! Man, let it rest on the crown of Joseph. There was a saying that they said about David. They said Saul has killed his thousands, David is 10,000s. This sounds a lot like the 10,000s of Ephraim, the thousands of Manasseh. They knew David's lineage. They knew the Josephite language. So we see that the Most High that dwells in the bush is going to bring the blessings of the everlasting hills on the crown of Joseph. Where have we heard about these everlasting hills? Let's go to another messianic prophecy in Micah chapter 5, shall we? So in Micah chapter 5, verse 2, it says, But thou, O Bethlehem Ephraim, though thou be little among the thousands of the cities of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me he that is to be ruler of Yasharal, whose going forth has been of old, from everlasting. Whoa, that sounds like the same ancient hills, everlasting connotation. You got to look at these prophetic undertones that Moses spoke upon Joseph. And in this context, it's talking about Bethlehem. Is there a link between Bethlehem and Joseph? That's when we go back to Genesis 35. So I told y'all in Genesis 35, verse 19, we see, And Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. In the Hebrew, the house of bread. So we have this house of bread, and we have this fruitful Ephraitah, because that's what Ephraitah means. We have this fruit of the vine, and we have this bread. When the high priest would go before the very presence of the Most High Yah, they had the showbread. They had that grape. They had those that wine oblation. This goes back to Joseph. This is where Yeshua said, I am that true vine. Now, how do we know that that's connected to Joseph? When Christ sat at the well, showing himself to be the true vine in John chapter 4, the Samaritan woman, understand, Samaria was the capital of Ephraim. So she was probably a descendant of an Ephraimite family that returned back to the land. You had a lot of different tribes that returned to Judea during the time period of Christ. A lot of y'all think everybody in Judea was of the tribe of Judah. That is so far from the truth. So when you talk about Judea being scattered to the four corners of the earth, this is talking about 70 CE. It's not giving you a specific tribe. It's telling you that the Israelites during that time period of Judea would be scattered to the four corners of the earth. We know that Christ came from Bethlehem through David's lineage, so he would have been an Ephraimite by blood that lived in Judea. So he was from Judea or Judah, Judea being a Latinized version of the term. He would have come from Judah, specifically Bethlehem, through the blood lineage of Ephraim. So you have to know these regions. We also know in Matthew chapter 4 verse 15 that it says Galilee of the Gentiles when referring to Zebulun, Naphtali, a lot of these northern kingdom Gentiles that did return. These outcasts of Israel that we read about in Isaiah chapter 11. A lot of y'all skim past that and you go to Judah scattered to the four corners. Judea would be scattered. The Bible tells you Judea was scattered. Christ tells you in Luke chapter 21 that Judea would tremble under Rome and they would be scattered when Rome destroyed Judea in 70 CE. This is not talking about the tribe of Judah. This is talking about Judea, that second temple era of Israelites. They will be destroyed. The ones that got caught were put to death, and the other ones will be scattered to the four corners of the earth. We see this sense of the transatlantic slave trade, which was prophecy of those Negroes, those Israelite descendants being found out in Africa and sold to the four corners of the earth. So now we see in Genesis chapter 35, and I hope y'all taking notes because I'm giving you straight facts and straight scripture. A lot of y'all just getting your feelings, but if you would just stay with the teaching, take notes, write down these precepts and study them for yourself, man. Look into it for yourself. I'm not trying to brainwash you. Some of y'all think, oh, he's just trying to read it. Yeah. Shout out to everybody that has studied this and can be a witness to say, yeah, I looked into what JB is saying. There is truth to this in the scriptures about Joseph being scattered, those Bethlehemites that were in Judea going into Africa. There's so much history. So how did Bethlehem become associated with Ephraim? when you saw in Micah chapter 5 verse 2 that this everlasting hills of Bethlehem, this person who's going forth has been of old, that we see in Deuteronomy 33, would to him like the horns of Ephraim would regather to the ends of the earth, going back to Shiloh. How did Bethlehem get caught up in Ephraim? Now we see in Genesis 35 that Rachel, who was the mother of Joseph and Benjamin, that she died going to Bethlehem. Now, Rachel was the mother of Joseph and Benjamin. We see Leah was the mother of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and that kind of thing. So Rachel, the mother of Joseph and Benjamin, keep that in mind, died in Bethlehem. That's a big deal, family. Because she died there, a clan of Ephraimites, known as Ephrathites in a gentilic form, they went to settle in Bethlehem of Judah. Now, we see in Joshua chapter 15 that it lists every city that was given to the tribe of Judah or the Judah region. So when you say Judah, it's talking about the cities of Judah. And Bethlehem was not one of those cities that was included. This is because when Rachel died there, Ephraim, they said, we will dwell where our mother's bones lie. And they claimed that city. And this was orchestrated by Joshua, an Ephraimite that led the Israelites into the promised land. He allowed Ephraim to keep that land, that being his grandmother, Rachel, and Ephraim settled in Bethlehem. So when that happens in Genesis 35, we set up the story of Ruth. Now I know that was a lot of prophecy, a lot of groundwork I had to set up. I might make this a second part to go deeper into the book of Ruth by itself. But now we're going to look at the book of Ruth, family, and go deeper. Now, so we see these Ephrathites come on the scene, these Bethlehemites that were actually Israelites of the tribe of Ephraim. We see this in the book of Ruth. Now, let's start at chapter 1. It says, now it came to pass in those days when the judges ruled. So now to give you some context, the book of Ruth was written during the time of the judges, Samuel being the last great judge of Israel before the era of the kings or the monarchy of Israel, right? So Samuel was during that era. Most scholars believe Samuel, the Ephraimite out of Mount Ephraim, actually wrote this book. A lot of y'all like, Samuel, Ephraimite? And me look at that real quick just to establish who is the author of the book of Ruth. Now, let's go to the book of Samuel. Now, in 1 Samuel, chapter 1, verse 1, it says, now there came a certain man of Ramath Zophim, of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroam, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and Ephrathite. That word Ephrathite is Ephraimite. H673, you can Google it. H673 means an inhabitant of Bethlehem that's an Ephraimite, also a descendant of Ephraim. So somebody that was an Ephraimite that dwelt in Bethlehem or an Ephraimite stand alone. We see in this context that Samuel did not come from Bethlehem. He came from Mount Ephraim. Now, so he's an Ephraimite that's from Mount Ephraim. This is how we know the word Ephrathite is denoting a certain Ephraimite, either one from Mount Ephraim or one from Bethlehem, Judah, where the clan of Ephraimites settled. Now that we know the author of Ruth is Samuel, and Samuel himself is an Ephraimite, which is how he knew about a man after Yah's heart to go anoint David as king. Now that we know that, let's go back to David's family tree in the book of Ruth and see this beautiful story in more detail. So, when we look back at the book of Ruth, let's go there. It says, now it came to pass in those days when the judges ruled, this is Samuel accounting this history, that there was a famine in the land. So during the time of the judges' family, there was a famine in the land of Israel. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, a certain man that lived in Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab. So this man, we're going to find out who he is. He went to live in Moab, he and his wife and his two sons, because the famine that was in Israel. Now we see Israel do this from time to time, family. We see them go into Egypt during the time of the famine. We see Abraham do this, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph goes and secures a spot in Goshen for Israel, and the whole family of Israel goes to other countries to sojourn at times of crisis within Israel. Now, verse 2, it says, and the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the name of his two sons, Malion and Kilion, Ephraimites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. So they lived in Moab until they found out that there was some more bread in Bethlehem, and they would go back. We're going to see that in the story. So clearly the Bible tells you that they are Ephraimites of Bethlehem, Judah. We know that Ephrathite, that some people say that, okay, this could be somebody that lives in Bethlehem. If you Google it, Ephrathite by definition is either an Ephraimite or one that lives in Bethlehem, also an Ephraimite. Pay attention to that word also. It means an Ephraimite in Bethlehem, Judah, or an Ephraimite, because the Bethlehem, Judah resident was also an Ephraimite. But this is to distinguish between Ephraimites of Samaria or of Bethel or of Mount Ephraim, right? We had this city of Bethlehem within Judah. That's why it's called Bethlehem, Judah, that was given to the tribe of Ephraim because their foremother died there. That was a big deal, family. Now let's keep reading. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. So while they were in Moab, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was only left with her 2 sons. And they took wives of the women of Moab. So this is a dark time period in Israelite history. They had to leave their promised land because of the famine. They had to marry strange women. Then Elimelech, their father, dies, and it's only her 2 sons married to these strange women in the time of a famine. It's a dark saga, family. Let's keep reading. And they dwelt there about 10 years. So they stayed in Moab 10 years. And then Malion and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left, Naomi, left of her 2 sons and her husband. So this woman's left by herself. Her husband's dead. Her 2 sons are dead in a strange land with her 2 daughter-in-laws. Now let's watch this. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that they might return from Moab, for she heard in the country of Moab how the Most High Yah had visited his people and given them bread. It's mighty strange, family, that Bethlehem means the house of bread. But there was a famine in the land. And it's weird that when this family leaves, eventually the Most High revisits Bethlehem and restores Bethlehem to truly be a house of bread. So this family can come back. So it's a time period of restoration. Now, I'm going to summarize the rest of the book, family, and I'm going to get to the area that a lot of y'all have contention about with regard to Boaz, Pharez, that whole lineage. So basically what happens, they come back. Naomi is very bitter. Her name means pleasant or bountiful or merry or pleasant, Naomi, but she wants the people to call her Mara. Because when she comes back, the people says, that's Naomi. Y'all, that's our sister Naomi. And she said, don't come up to me. The Lord has done treacherously to me. So she's in a place of mourning, family. We can understand that she lost her husband and her 2 sons. And she even tells her daughters-in-law, she said, well, y'all go back to your own country. Don't come here. There's nothing good here. You staying with me. I don't have no more boys I can birth for y'all to have husbands. My sons are dead. Y'all can just go back to your country and live in peace. So she's in a low place, and Ruth tells her, this is the faith of Ruth, the Moabite. Now this gets into the Moors, why they say Moabite. Now this gets into David's or Dawood's lineage. So Ruth says, I ain't going nowhere. Your God is going to be my God, right? So she said, your God is going to be my God. So long story short, it happens that while Ruth is trying to get food for her mother-in-law, Naomi, that she gleans in a field that was by purpose of the Most High Yah, because Boaz, who is near kin to Elimelech, shows up. Now, long story short, Naomi says the Lord has smiled on us, because how did something like this happen? I didn't even think that we had kinsmen, because in the Levirate customs that the Igbo and the Nigerians practice today, when a woman died, if she didn't have any sons, the nearest relative could take her possession. She couldn't have a place to stay. And they still do this in Nigeria, which shows that they're Northern Kingdom. That's a whole nother thing. But that Levirate custom is very serious. But because Ruth finds favor with Boaz, it restores her, restores Naomi, gives her a dwelling place, and restores the name of Elimelech and his 2 sons by Boaz raising up the seed. There was a closer kin that he did not want to raise up. Now y'all watch this. He did not want to raise up the name of Elimelech because he had a mighty name and he had a mighty inheritance. So if you do the Kinsman Redeemer Act, your lineage is no longer named. You are merely being named after the lineage of your brother that you're raising up. That's the sacrifice that you make to raise up your brother. but in Israelite custom, you are obliged to do that, or they would take off one of their shoes and spit in your face because you brought disgrace to your brother's household. Now, this stuff is very deep, family. So he denies doing that, and Boaz does it. Boaz says, okay, I love Ruth. This is a faithful woman. She's faithful. She stays with her mother-in-law. She is so faithful to rebuild and stay and help out her mother-in-law that he just falls in love with such a faithful woman like this. He falls in love with her and is more than glad to marry her to raise up Elimelech. So family, the purpose of the story is that last part in Ruth chapter 4. Now let's go to it. So in Ruth chapter 4, we see this infamous lineage that is named, that a lot of just chaos has happened. In verse 18, it says, now these are the generations of Pharez. Why is it bringing up Pharez? Let's keep reading. Pharez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Aminadab. Aminadab begot Nahshon. Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz. Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Jesse. And Jesse begot Dawood. Now let's look at this, family. So why is it listing Boaz's lineage? Now there's two theories. I had a brother say, well, JB, that's Elimelech's lineage. We know, family, that this is not Elimelech's lineage because in Ruth chapter 1 verse 2, I showed you guys that it calls Elimelech and his sons Ephraimites. So this Pharez lineage going back to Judah could not be Elimelech's lineage. If anything, let's list all the possible scenarios. Either this is the Judean scribes honoring Boaz because of his sacrifice and listing his lineage to show that the Most High would redeem his lineage because physically David was coming through that lineage, even though legally it would belong to Elimelech. So that's the first hypothesis, that this lineage does not belong to Boaz, but it belongs to Elimelech. We know that that can't be it because Ruth chapter 1 verse 2 tells you that that lineage of Elimelech is an Ephraimite lineage. So then, okay, this is Boaz's lineage. This is option 2 that the Most High is just honoring. If that scenario is true, that means blood-wise, if that lineage is correct, we could say that Dawood or David comes from Pharez through Judah physically. But the moral of the story, family, was that as a kinsman redeemer, according to the Levirate customs of the Israelite, Boaz's lineage is not legal. That means even though physically it could have been Judah, it's all about Elimelech's lineage because Boaz is doing the duty of the kinsman redeemer to raise up his brother near of kin. Elimelech raise up his name for his inheritance for Naomi and Ruth and that offspring. So the Bible clearly tells you that Elimelech is an Ephrathite that lived in Bethlehem. We see that in Ruth chapter 1 verse 2. Let's go back to that just so I can prove that to you all. So in Ruth, we saw in Ruth chapter 1 verse 2 that there was a man named Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his two sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And to all y'all that say it says Ephrathites, that ain't an Ephraimite. Ephraimite means somebody that lives in Bethlehem, Judah. So that means you're saying that the word says two sons Mahlon and Chilion, dwellers of Bethlehem, Judah, of Bethlehem, Judah. That doesn't make sense, family, because you would not have needed the word Ephrathite if Ephrathite merely means an inhabitor of Bethlehem, Bethlehem, Judah. Now, you could have just removed that word. So we know that that word Ephrathite has to mean Ephraimite, which means that that lineage was either an insertion by the Judean scribes that really didn't hold any legal weight because Elimelech's lineage is an Ephraimite, or they are paying homage to Boaz, who physically was from Judah and was merely doing the role of the kinsman redeemer. Or it makes more sense, how is Boaz of Judah and Elimelech's an Ephraimite? That would have contradicted the Levirate custom because that is cross-contaminating two tribes' inheritance. Y'all gotta see this. So if he was from Judah, he could not rebuild his brother's house because then he has inheritance in the tribe of Judah as well as Ephraim. The purpose of the Levirate custom was they had to be compatible. They both had to be Judah, or they both had to be Ephraim. For a Judah to redeem a Judah brother, he had to be Judah. An Ephraimite to be redeemed, he had to be Ephraim so that it wouldn't cross-contaminate the inheritances. What does that mean, family? For him to rebuild his brother's name and not have another inheritance, he had to be the same tribe. Or he would have had another tribe inheritance within Judah, and he would have had one in Ephraim, which they made sure that kind of stuff did not take place, family, according to the Levitical law. Now that's also proved that Ephrathite word a little bit more. We already know that the author of the book of Ruth is Samuel the prophet himself. And in 1 Samuel chapter 1, we read that word Ephrathite as well. It says, there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zaphim of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroam, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and Ephrathite. So we know that this word Ephrathite is not saying a dweller of Bethlehem, Judah, because the text already tells you that it's from Mount Ephraim. So Ephrathite does not merely mean a dweller in Bethlehem. It means a dweller in Bethlehem, also in Ephraimite. So either an Ephraimite in Bethlehem, Judah, we see that based on the context in David's lineage, or we see an Ephraimite period, which we see with Samuel's lineage. He was an Ephraimite from Mount Ephraim. So we see that Samuel knew about these Ephraimites, which gives a wink wink how he knew to anoint Dawood as the king of choice after Saul failed to do all that the Lord commanded him. Now, let's show another example of that. When we look at King Yoruba, now King Yoruba, or King Jeroboam, is the founder of the northern kingdom. We also know that him being the founder of the northern kingdom, let me see if I can find it. He was, the Yoruba people are named after this. So we know that the Yoruba people get their name from Yoruba. We know there was no J in the Hebrew, so King Jeroboam, or Yoruba, is the king Ephrathite or Ephraimite that was the royal family of the northern kingdom. But when you look at the scriptures, families, there is no scripture that calls him an Ephraimite. There is only one scripture that calls his lineage, and it uses the word Ephrathite. Ooh, I'm telling y'all, this stuff is powerful. When you put the puzzle pieces together and you patiently look at the precepts and the history, you could put all the picture together. We know every Israelite say, oh yeah, we know King Jeroboam was an Ephraimite, but that's not stated in the scripture. Let's look at what the scripture says. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 26, it says, and Yaruba, the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite of Zerida. So that was another city of Ephraim, Zerida. So he was an Ephraimite from Zerida, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his head against the king. So the Most High used King Yoruba to incite an insurrection by the will of the Most High to separate the 10 tribes from the 2 tribes. This was because Solomon increased the taxes on Israel to the extent that Israel said, either Rehoboam, you're going to lower the taxes that Solomon raised, because he was sleeping these arranged marriages with all these other nations, and to make them happy, he didn't tax them as bad as he taxed his own people. So King Rehoboam, you're either going to lower these taxes, or we don't want nothing to do with the house of David. Now, understand, family, the reason David was able to unite all the 12 tribes was because David was an Ephraimite by blood, but he was Judah by residence. So because of that peaceful determination of the Father's will to orchestrate such a beautiful event, he brought peace to both kingdoms. But Solomon started loving the other nations more than his own people by sleeping with these strange women, that he increases the taxes. Rehoboam is given an option to lower the taxes, but he listens to some knucklehead friends, and he says, my pinky finger is stronger than all my daddy junk. And he said, I ain't gonna do it. I'm gonna live good off my daddy, what my daddy did. And then Northern Kingdom, led by Yoruba, says, to your tents, O Israel. And they reject the Southern Kingdom. They loved David because David was a blood Ephraimite in Bethlehem in Judah. So they knew he was their blood. And Judah loved him because they just saw him as Judah, because he was born and raised in Judah, and that was his hometown dwelling place. But the kingdom split, and Yoruba becomes the leader, that royal Ephraimite family of the northern kingdom. But the Bible does not call him an Ephraimite, it calls him an Ephrathite, the same word that it calls Samuel from Mount Ephraim, the same word that it calls the greatest king in Israelite history, King Dawood. Let's check it out. So, in 1 Samuel, let me prove it. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, we see this Ephrathite word. Many translations have gone ahead and just showed you what it really is as an Ephraimite, but a lot of y'all didn't want to hear that. Now let's look at we can use the context of the scriptures to show the same point. So in 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 12 it says, now Dawood was the son of the Ephraimites of Bethlehem, Yehudah, whose name was Jesse. So we see post the book of Ruth that Samuel, who's writing this after the book of Ruth, calls David an Ephraimite. This is consistent with Ruth chapter 1 verse 2 that says Elimelech was an Ephraimite that lived within Bethlehem, he and his 2 sons. Boaz is resurrecting that lineage, which means Boaz is an Ephraimite as well. And that lineage that is put at the end of the chapter either was Judean influence, or at best where they're trying to say Boaz was related to Pharez, but that still is nullified by the context of the scriptures because he's doing the act of the kinsman redeemer to rebuild Elimelech, which the Bible tells you is an Ephraimite, the same word that it uses for Samuel, the prophet, who is writing the book of Ruth in 1 Samuel 1 verse 1 that says he's an Ephraimite from Mount Ephraim. That same Ephraimite that most of us know King Yoruba or Jeroboam is an Ephraimite, that word is Ephraimite as well. Because in H673 in the concordance, the word Ephraimite and Ephraimite are both one and the same. Sometimes you had Ephraimites that lived in Bethlehem, but this is also an Ephraimite. A Bethlehemite is an Ephraimite, or you had Ephraimites that were in Mount Ephraim and other cities, because each tribe was given different territories and cities when they inhabited the promised land. So y'all, I hope y'all got something out of this. I thought I was gonna be able to cover everything in this, but it's just a teaching segment. I'm just showing y'all this history, showing y'all these precepts. So family, I hope you got something out of it. Peace, love, blessings, and Israelite power to all my Moorish Ephraimites, all my Israelites scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. I love you all with the love of the Messiah. Be blessed. Shalom. All praises.